just a little bit by way of background about tonight's talk. Some of you know that in 2010 I entered the Community Dharma Leaders training program out at Spirit Rock. And one of the books that we were asked to read for that 2-year training is called Dharma, Color, and Culture, New Voices in Western Buddhism. This was written in 2002, and this was a resource for some of my talk tonight, as is a second volume entitled Time to Stand Up. Oh, and by the way, the first one is a collection of multiple voices, and you'll be hearing some of those tonight in the talk. And the second volume is entitled Time to Stand Up. This is a recent release by Tanisara, who is a Buddhist teacher. She was one of my primary teachers for those 2 years on the West Coast, and it's subtitled The Buddha's Life and Message Through Feminine Eyes. So she's looking at all the issues that are calling to our attention. I guess it really has 2 subtitles. The other one is An Engaged Buddhist Manifesto for Our Earth. So some of us check the website before we come on Tuesday nights, curious about who's teaching and what's the topic going to be about, and do I really want to come tonight or not, So in case you didn't read it, I'll just summarize what I wrote for this descriptor for tonight. It's easy to be stunned by the enormity of crises occurring in the systems we're living in. What guideposts can we rely upon to help us show up for challenges, to teach us to love the things of the world? How do we move from separation to a seamless reality, a unity of consciousness? So this evening's talk, which is going to be at least one of 2, maybe one of 3, is aimed, like most of the talks we give here, at helping us to wake up a little bit more, little by little, to understand the truth, to get a feeling, a flavor for what is a seamless reality or a unity of consciousness. What is the reality of no separation? Sometimes for the sake of learning to create some real change, i.e. a change in behavior, we have to first hear some concepts or some ideas about things that we're not too informed about. And poetry never fails to move most of us in some way in order to know what's true. So in a moment, that's how we'll begin tonight. I'll share some ideas and some poetry with you. And the invitation throughout the whole evening is to, as always, just notice your response to ideas, concepts, and notice what else is going on. Expansion, opening, curiosity to what you're hearing, skepticism, empathy, tightness, doubt, anger, compassion, contraction, all of these like a cascade of changing mind states, changing thoughts. We might also notice just the tendency we have to flee or freeze or fight out of a need for safety, for reasons of doubt, or out of a need to maintain some sense of security, and sometimes simply out of fear, the not knowing, and sometimes also from a sense of hopelessness or futility. So again, the invitation is simply to notice tonight, what am I experiencing? What's arising, and how am I meeting it? How am I greeting it? And you might notice too where there's a turning towards and where there's a turning away. Not with a need to fix it or change it or make it different, but just noticing the turning towards, the turning away, the shift. And then ask yourself, is it possible to stay present with your experience, whatever it is, the freezing, the fighting, the fleeing, neither deserting it for the sake of perceived safety, nor exploding or freezing with reactivity, which is its own form of separation. So, here are a few readings, an invitation to listen, reflect. The first one's from Wendell Berry, a farmer and a poet. There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated spaces. From a Japanese poet. Under the cherry blossom tree, there is no such thing as a stranger. Under the cherry blossom tree, there is no such thing as a stranger. The next one is from Ralph Steele, who is a Buddhist monk. What is the cause of our suffering, of our stress? The first is craving, our habitual thirst, our addictions, our obsessiveness in looking for happiness and fulfillment in using objects or substances or people. The second is ignorance, not understanding what we're doing and not understanding our shadow. The way we hide our motives from ourselves and go along sometimes with the collective shadow of society. He goes on to say, are we willing to educate ourselves about oppression, to interact with people of other ethnic origins, to read books that may unsettle us? Are we willing to sit with restlessness, with a sense of futility, to keep paying attention and use everything as a tool for practice, the mud and the lotus flower? And then a poem by Marilyn McIntyre. If you forget what axons do or how a virus invades a cell, remember this, that light becomes food, that the seasons rhyme, a different word each time turning soil into living song, that all things work together, even death, even decay, that this is the way of the world we got. What is given grows by grace and care and knows what it needs. That life is strong and precarious, full of devices and desires. That what we hold in common may not be owned. Control is costly. Close attention is the reverence due whatever lives and moves, mutant and quick and clever. That our neighbors, the plankton, the white pine, the busy nematodes, serve us best in reciprocal gratitude. What they receive, they give. The way the heart accepts what the vein delivers and sends it on again and again. And then a quote, and I don't know who to attribute to. I found it in a book and it's not attributed to any one individual. How should I treat others? Answer, there are no others. And then a poem of a migrant worker in China's Foxconn factory, written shortly before he took his life. A screw fell to the ground in this dark night of overtime, plunging vertically. lightly clinking, it won't attract anyone's attention. Just like last time, on a night like this, when someone plunged to the ground. And then from Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh. Without suffering, there's no way you could learn to be compassionate. Ill-being can be described in terms of violence or discrimination, hate, jealousy, anger, craving, and ignorance, especially ignorance. It's out of ignorance that we do many things that make us and others suffer. You cannot see the path leading to the cessation of ill-being unless you understand ill-being and its nature. Can a lotus flower without the mud? There is no understanding and compassion without suffering. And he goes on to say, a color has no self. A color is made only of other colors. Looking deeply into one color, you can see all the other colors in it. The color white is made of non-white elements. The color brown is made of non-brown elements. The color black is made of non-black elements. We enter-are. We enter-are. That is the fact. You are in me, and I am in you. Ignorance says one of us is superior or inferior to the other. If you suffer, I suffer. If you are in safety, I am in safety. Safety and peace are not individual matters. If you are born and raised in the United States, don't let American culture imprison you. Open your heart to learn other ways of thinking and behaving, including those of the country where your ancestors and your ancestors' ancestors were born, and those of this country whose experience does not match your own. And this is from Michelle Benjamin Miki, who is an artist and a spiritual teacher. And she writes of her experience. Racism was my playground battlefield as a child. The racism was mostly directed from my father's family. It was mostly experienced from my father's family, who was an amalgam of Czechoslovakian, German, Moroccan, Egyptian, and English Catholic origins. Because of his marriage to a Japanese woman whose parents were prejudiced against Caucasians, wanting their daughter to marry a Japanese man, preferably a doctor. And she goes on to say, in the practice of the Dharma, I signed a peace treaty with all the warring factions inside myself. Pearl Harbor and Hiroshima, Jesus and Buddha, Mary and Tara, martial arts study and nonviolence, all these parts of me come together to lead me towards freedom. Part of my remembering practice is to remember my ancestors each day, remembering our land ancestors, indigenous peoples and animals, plants and minerals. It's written, know ye the grasses and trees, the worms and moths, the different sort of ants. Know ye the four-footed animals, small and great, the fish which range in the water, the birds that are borne along on wings. As I walk the path of the compassionate warrior, she says, love and tolerance are my great teachers. Fiercely loving myself and others, beginning each day with gratitude, committing not to harm either myself or others. I can let go of the clinging and the craving, I can face the future without fear. And from Rilke, the German writer, let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Wisdom says, I'm nothing. Compassion says, I'm everything. Between these two banks, the life of an awakened one flows. So let's sit for a moment. Make yourself comfortable. Close your eyes if you like. And this is also from Rilke. Quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes space around you. Feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower, and you the bell. As you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the change. What is it like, such intensity of pain? If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water, speak, I am. Quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let the darkness be a bell tower, and you the bell. As you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the change. What is it like? Such intensity of pain. If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. And to the rushing water, speak, I am. So the invitation is to explore what separates. How can we shift out of fear, a divided consciousness that keeps us fighting? And how do we embody a heart where every being is a resident? Everything that comes to us that is difficult, painful, or terrible is something that needs our love. To show up for the conversation and to allow ourselves to feel and to be with what's true, that's our course. To take the veil from our eyes. I'm struck sometimes by the idea that in our world today, we read, we take in new ideas, we hear the voices that we've not heard before, and in that moment there's a waking up. And how easy it is to slip back to the rut of our everyday life. To think that we've been there, we know that now, we are familiar with that. But not to be galvanized into anything beyond some sense of knowing. So maybe that's the question. How do we move now? Not become overwhelmed by all that we've heard, seen, witnessed. Joanna Macy, who's a Buddhist scholar, and she's 82, I think now, 81. Anyway, she's been practicing for 6 decades. This is what she says. This is from a conversation she had with someone who was interviewing her. She says, the most sorely needed consolation amid the darknesses that we encounter, both as individuals and increasingly as a society, is that spiritual survival isn't a matter of sheepish optimism or of eradicating our dark emotions, but of simply showing up. She says, I'm not insisting that we be brimming with hope. It's okay not to be optimistic. Feeling that you have to maintain hope can wear you out. We've all been there. So just be present. The biggest gift you can give is to be absolutely present. When you're worrying about whether you're hopeful or hopeless or pessimistic or optimistic, she says, who cares? The main thing is that you're showing up, that you are here, and that you are finding ever more capacity to love this world. You are finding ever more capacity to love this world, because it will not be healed without that. That is what is going to unleash our intelligence and our solidarity for the healing of our world. She goes on to say, how is the story going to end? It almost seems orchestrated to bring forth from us the largest moral strength, courage, and creativity. When things are unstable, a person's determination, how they choose to invest energy, the heart, the mind, can have much more effect on the larger picture than we are accustomed to thinking. It's a very exciting time to be alive, she says, if somewhat wearing emotionally. You're always asked to stretch a little bit more, but that's actually what we're made for. There's a song that wants to sing itself through us. We've just got to be available. Maybe the song that is to be sung through us is the most beautiful requiem for an irreplaceable planet. Or maybe it's a song of joyous rebirth as we recreate a new culture that doesn't destroy its world. But in any case, she concludes, there is absolutely no excuse for making our passionate love for our world dependent on what we think of its degree of health, whether we think it's going to go on forever. Those are just thoughts. Those are just thoughts. But in this moment, you are alive, so you can dial up the magic anytime. The true root of radiance, of brightness, is to honor this moment. Show up now. So, advice from another person who's been involved in this asking these questions for quite some time. Andrew Harvey says, if you want to know what to do, ask yourself, what wakes you up at night? What breaks your heart? And then get up in the morning with the intention of doing one thing to mend that heartbreak, that one broken thing. Changes have arrived. We think that this mind is outside the body, but in this mind is the body, is all bodies, is all things. In this mind is the earth. In this mind is the cosmos. And in this mind, at its most profound level, we connect with here and now in a moment of mindfulness. Awareness will guide us as we show up and we allow ourselves to be empty. Empty from our strategies, our fears, and willing to feel what's present. It will move and guide us in simple, small steps or a complete, radical reviewing, new seeing of everything. And the last words are from the Buddha. When you know for yourselves that something is unwholesome and harmful, then you should reject it. And when you know for yourselves that something is wholesome and beneficial, then you should accept it and put it into practice. Thank you for listening, for being here tonight, and for your practice. For your practice.